All right, guys, here we are today to talk about the USMNT roster for upcoming October games versus Germany on the 14th of October and against Ghana on the 17th of October. These two friendlies will be very, very different than the friendlies we played in September against Uzbekistan and against Oman because these will actually be good quality challenging opponents. So a lot more compelling in terms of being able to judge tactics, player performances, etc. We really weren't able to read too much into the last games, even players who had good performances, because the quality of the opposition was so poor. So this will be a lot more telling. We also have some key players returning from injury, Gio Reyna, Tyler Adams, guys like that, and that could be very interesting for these games as well. What makes this roster even more interesting is that there will be a simultaneous under 23 Olympic preparation camp. Those under 23s will play Japan and Mexico's under 23s. That will be happening in Phoenix, Arizona. We'll cover those games as well. I will probably do a separate roster video for that one. And this video is not so much about what I think Gregg Berhalter is going to do, although I'll address that a little bit. It's more about what I would do with this roster. And because we do have that under 23 roster, I think it's important to note right from the beginning that I would prioritize Copa America. That is a tournament that players have to get released for. We're hosting it at home here. It's a major deal. That's the one that we need to prioritize. So if you're in our top 23 players, even if you are Olympic eligible, you go to the Copa America, and the Olympics will be guys who are Olympic eligible, but maybe aren't quite in that top 23 for the senior team. All right, let's dive into it now, guys. First up, goalkeepers. And honestly, guys, this one's pretty straightforward. Matt Turner is still our number one. For me, Ethan Horvath is still our number two, even though, there are people who will say because he's not playing, he shouldn't be our number two. I'd argue that, that game against Oman, although he didn't have much to do in terms of, saving shots, he looked quite good on the ball still and looked comfortable and confident. And really, he isn't being challenged by anybody. And really, there isn't a meaningful challenger right now. Now, in the September camp, the third goalkeeper was Drake Callender. If Gregg Berhalter brings Drake Callender again or a guy like Roman Celentano, I'm fine with that. Honestly, I would probably bring, Gabriel Slonina just because he is playing regularly for UPenn. He's a starter there now. At 19 years old, playing in the Belgian league, getting reps, particularly getting reps on some things that I love. In Chicago, they weren't playing out of the back when Slonina was there, so he didn't get those reps playing out of the back, which is partially what has contributed to him being so poor with his feet. If you watch the clips of him playing for UPenn, even under pressure, he is being asked to play out of the back, and there could not be a better way for him to develop there. Okay. Yes, it's a terrible, Belgian team. They almost got relegated last year. That doesn't matter. He's 19 years old. He's playing regularly in a pretty decent league, the Belgian league, and he's getting reps. And he's getting reps doing the right things. And that's what's important for Gaga right now. I'd probably bring him as the third, but to be honest, if there is that under 23 camp, I don't think UPenn's going to release him to go, across the country for something that they don't, or across the Atlantic for something they don't have to release him for. But I'd try to get him and Brady in that under 23 camp. If not, okay, then we bring him here to this one. But look, like I said, if you bring Drake Callender or Roman Celentano, they're both young enough and promising enough goalkeepers. So that as the third goalkeeper wouldn't really matter to me too much. All right, going into fullbacks now. And honestly, guys, I would bring the same fullbacks that Gregg Berhalter brought in September. Serginho Dest and Joe Scally on the right, Anthony Robinson and Christopher Lund on the left. Now, we didn't really get a good look at Christopher Lund in the last camp. I mean, we got to look at him. It's just hard to read into his performances. I thought he had a very positive game, showed well, looked to get up the field, had some good crosses, combined well down that left. Obviously, though, we'd like to see him do it against, a team like Germany or Ghana and then see what he looks like. So certainly I would give him minutes. I'd probably start A-Rob in both of those games, but maybe give Lund the last 30 minutes against both of those teams, or maybe even a half in one of those games, maybe against Ghana, and just kind of see what he looks like. Because that spot behind Anthony Robinson is still up for grabs. I mean, Lund is probably the front runner right now, but then you've got guys like Caleb Wiley or, Dewan Jones or, John Tolkien, guys like that. Now, Tolkien and Wiley are obviously also Olympic eligible. Jonathan Gomez is another one as well. So there are guys, fighting for that spot. I think Lund is the front runner now, and I want to see him against Germany and Ghana. And then if he performs well, okay, he's probably not locked in that spot, but probably for now the backup to A-Rob. If he doesn't perform well, then the spot is still wide open. But, other than that, these are the four that I would bring. I don't think there's a ton of debate within the fan base. Brian Reynolds, maybe that he's Olympic eligible, probably try to get him into that under 23 camp. Marlon Fossey is not Olympic eligible, but could be an interesting one. I just don't see anybody challenging Destin Scally right now from that, for that right back spot. Let's talk about center backs, guys. And the obvious ones, obviously, I'd say are Tim Ream and Chris Richards, right? They are our presumed starters, or at least should be for now, unless something changes. And then the backups, right? Cameron Carter-Vickers, for me, is our first backup. But unfortunately, on FOTMob, it says Cameron Carter-Vickers will be back early October. But the guy's been out for a few months. I doubt he will have played any minutes by the time we announce this roster. Usually they announce the rosters 9 days before the first game, right? So if the first game is on the 14th, that means probably on the 5th of October they'll announce the roster. I doubt very much he'll have played any minutes. And even if he's played 10 minutes for Celtic, I would say, let him stay over at Celtic, rest, recuperate, recover, get back to full fitness, playing regularly, and then we can bring him in for those crucial Copa America qualifiers in November. So Mark McKenzie, who I thought showed pretty okay as well in the September camp. Again, the opponent, makes that a bit of an asterisk for all of our players. But yeah, bring him in. I thought he's been doing well enough in Belgium. And I think personally, the alternate options are not great. I mean, you could argue Austin Trusty, right? Austin Trusty has not played much for Sheffield. He had a few minutes. It'll be interesting to see if Austin Trusty plays it all this weekend after Sheffield United got spanked 8-0 by Newcastle. There might be some changes, and we'll see what that looks like. But the guy that I want to see here is John Brooks. Hoffenheim are currently, I believe, in the top 4 of the Bundesliga. Starting very strong, had a clean sheet again on the weekend. He has not been perfect by any means, right? We can't pretend he had one mistake 2 weeks ago on a goal. Here's the thing. He's not a starter for me. But as left-footed center backs go, I think John Brooks deserves another chance. Do I think there is an even 1% chance that John Brooks will be in this roster? No, I do not. I think his career is over. And some people in the comments will inevitably go, Pete, John Brooks' career is over. Gregg isn't going to call him in. Stop talking about it. I didn't start this channel in order to echo what U.S. soccer does. I started this channel to say what I think and who I think should be in there. And if you disagree, that's fine. But telling me to not talk about something that I think is just silly. I'm going to talk about it. And I think John Brooks should be in there. And just because it's over, I don't think we should all go, well, I guess we should just lie back and accept that. I think if you think John Brooks should be in there, if you think his performances for Hoffenheim warrant it, then say so. And if you don't think so, that's fine too. Say so. Have a different opinion. But the idea that we shouldn't discuss it never made any sense to me. So these are the 4 I would bring. John Brooks to be the backup to Tim Ream, and Mark McKenzie will be the backup to Chris Richards. Obviously, we all know Brooks is not going to be there. My guess is it'll be either Miles or Walker, or potentially both. Maybe not even McKenzie. Maybe Miles and Walker will be there with Ream and Richards. We'll see. We'll see what Gregg Berhalter does, but these are the 4 that I would bring. I think John Brooks deserves another chance. Okay, he hasn't been perfect when he's played for the U.S., but pretending that, being on the outs for 2 years is insane. Like, being on the outs for 2 years is not worthy of, I think, the 2 poor performances that he had, certainly. And, we're giving second chances to Gregg Berhalter for some horrific things he did. I don't think whatever John Brooks did is not worthy of a second chance. And from what I have heard, he does still want to play for the U.S., and he's made that very clear as well. So let's bring him in. All right, midfielders now, and this is where we're going to look a little different from the September camp, mainly because of the guys coming back from injury. The big one, obviously, is Giovanni Reyna. Gio Reyna was injured in the last camp. He is back now, although he hasn't, played yet for Dortmund. He's been on the bench for the last 2 games. It'll be interesting to see if he gets any minutes this weekend. Gregg has finally spoken to him, according to U.S. Soccer. Doug McIntyre reported it. And what we have heard is that the pair, Gio and Gregg, are ready to move forward. So I fully expect him to be in this camp. I don't expect him to start any games because I don't think he will start any games between now and then for Dortmund. I do think he'll come off the bench in both of those games. Now, the question is, where does he play? I believe he should be central. That's why I have him in the midfielders. Most people who watched Gio for any length of time, and certainly who watched those Nations League, games also believe that Gio should be central. But Gregg has made it very clear that MMA is his preferred pairing. So I think Gio will start on the bench, and I think he'll come on for the last 30 minutes or something, probably replacing Tim Weah on the right in both of those games. We'll see. This camp, both Gio and Gregg will be under a microscope, right? Because of their past issues, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Gio has been fine in camp, and even Gregg admitted that he was fine after he apologized in the World Cup. So there is no reason to continue hating on Gio. He has moved on. Gio, even with his performances on the field, was very good in all 4 games that he played for the U.S. in both March and June. So there is absolutely no reason for people to keep hating on him. He's back. Let's hope he can stay healthy. That's the big one. Let's hope he can get some minutes off the bench for Dortmund so he can show what he can do. Johnny Cardoso is back from injury. He had to pull out of the other one. And Tyler Adams is back from injury. Supposedly he will be in the squad this weekend for Bournemouth. So I expect him to also be, in this roster, although it'll be interesting to see, right? Who do you start? Does Tyler Adams start if he hasn't started any games? Tyler Adams has been out a lot longer than Gio, right? Tyler Adams has been out since, I think it was February, right? So I don't know if he would start any games either. We might see a, Musa, McKennie, Luca midfield. It'll be interesting to see what Gregg does there. Malik Tillman is there. Johnny Cardoso is there. For me, when everybody is healthy and fit, this is our best midfield, these 7 guys. Everybody else is fighting for a way to look in, okay? Whether that's Paxton Aronson or, Tanner Tessman. Any of these other guys are sort of trying to break in here. For me, these are our top 7 for now, right? That could change over time as players break through. Some promising, Brian Gutierrez is a guy who should probably be with the under-23s if Chicago will release him. Paxton Aronson, under-23s, potentially. We'll see if he gets released. That's a tough one with the under-23s. Like, nobody's obligated to release them. And MLS clubs have even shown, reluctance to release players for actual tournaments like the Under-20 World Cup. So I don't know if they're it's going to be interesting to see with that roster who actually ends up getting released. But these are the 7 midfielders that I would bring. And all eyes will be on how Gregg Berhalter uses Gio Reyna. Wide forwards now. Now we have some injuries to contend with. Kevin Paredes is injured again, frustratingly. Says he'll be back mid-October, so I don't expect him to be in this roster. Taylor Booth is still out injured. Very strange. We don't know what's happening with him or what kind of injury it is. So Christian Pulisic, Timothy Weah, and Brendan Aronson are the 3 wingers, obviously. And the 4th one for me would be Luca Koleosho. Now, obviously, this is up to Luca. We invited him back in September to the camp, according to Gregg Berhalter. He turned us down to play for Italy's under-20s. Not their under-21s, who are competing for a Euro championship spot. They're doing their Euro championship qualifiers. Not their under-21s, they're under-20s. Okay? He rejected a senior team USMNT call-up to play for their under-20s. He's got to really love Italy or really not be interested in representing the U.S. But, he's young. Minds change. Things happen. Balogun kind of came out of the blue, right? For a while, he did turn us down. And then maybe we say to Luca, hey, look, Luca's playing in the Premier League, right? The guy has 350 minutes and 1 assist in the Premier League. And, he hasn't looked amazing in the Premier League, but he's looked like he can hang and he's had some really good moments. Let's bring him in. Invite him, okay? Invite Luca Koleosho into this camp. If he says no, I don't want to, okay, fine. That's all right. But at least we should invite him. And if we invite him, I think our winger pool is very much set. If Luca Koleosho, for one reason or another, says he doesn't want to come, well, then that 4th winger spot is a little bit, I don't want to say iffy, but there isn't really a clear option. With both Paredes and Booth out, could maybe invite Zendejas. His form over in Gold Cup makes me hesitant to do that. So I guess Zendejas would be I might prefer Zendejas to Areola. But honestly, just leave him out. We have Musa can play wide. McKennie can play wide, as we're seeing for Juve. Gio obviously can play wide. I don't think we really need to just bring 4 wingers. I don't think anybody else has earned it right now. So I would just bring these 3 if Luca Koleosho says no, honestly. And then, of course, this isn't even up for debate. Ricardo Pepi and Folarin Balogun should be the 2 strikers that we bring. Josh Sargent obviously is still injured. Otherwise, I think he would factor into this decision. But yeah, Balogun and Pepi are the guys. Both of them. Balogun had a rough week last week, missing 2 penalties, but I'm pretty sure he'll bounce back from that. Pepe's getting regular minutes off the bench and contributing with goals. So these are our two guys. They can fight it out. While we're talking about Balogun, it's important that we use him right. It's important that we use him well, right? We didn't use him well in this last camp, and even Berhalter admitted that, right? Balogun is not your classic hold-up target 9. He's just not, right? He's a guy who's going to stretch your back line. He's a vertical winger, to use a Gregg favorite. He's a guy who wants to hang out on the, just on the shoulder of the last defender and make those darting runs in behind. And we have to find him with those, particularly in transition. Too often we're not direct enough in transition, which I think is an area of progress for this team. If you want to play like a false 9, coming very deep with his back to goal, I just don't think that's his game, and I think you're going to have a frustrated Fuller and Balogun. So Gregg is going to have to adapt there. We'll see if he does. The history of Gregg adapting is not great, but we'll take a look in this camp. Overall, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how we look against Germany and against Ghana. Now, Germany is even more interesting because it will be Julian Nagelsmann's first game as the coach, as the head coach. They've been in a lot of turmoil. They haven't looked good for a while now. But when you get a new coach, usually you get that new coach bump, right? Where you're just like, okay, there's an excitement, there's a freshness, there's like, okay, we're starting from scratch here. Everyone's trying to impress the new coach. And usually teams get a little bit of that new coach bump. So it'll be interesting to see what Germany looks like and how we approach the game against them. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Smash that like button before you go. Have a great week, and I will see you all on the weekend, Sunday, for the USMNT Top 10. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.